very much for making this possible in this quarantine period, and thank everyone for your patience. This is April 16th, 2020 at 7:15 p.m. This is the Littleton Zoning Board of Appeals. We are not at the town offices, but each of us is patched in to a Zoom meeting, and we have a few ground rules to go over. First of all, we're going to conduct 3 hearings tonight, as well as administrative matters. The hosts for the meeting are going to try to monitor who speaks and when, so everyone needs to be called on. And I'm just going to recite something that was handed to me by the state and the townhouse. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial star 9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should state their name and address. We are also told as board members that we will hear the applicant's presentation. We should all mute ourselves when we are not called upon. I'm to call on you one at a time for comment. And when we move to a vote, I have to poll you one at a time for your vote. And when I call on you to vote, repeat your name and vote yes or no. Yay and nay is not picked up by the microphones properly. So having said that, the time is now about 7:18 p.m., 7:20, and I'm going to just quickly move to administrative matters. We will open the first hearing at 7:25, the scheduled time. Relative to administrative matters, as you all recall, we had a hearing with Chuck Bell, which involved an appeal from the zoning enforcement officer's cease and desist order, as well as a request for a variance. We tabled the appeal from the zoning enforcement officer's decision to enable no decision to be made on that aspect, on that appeal, until the applicant, Chuck Bell, had a chance to go before the planning board. Chuck Bell is now represented by counsel, and I believe counsel is Paul Alphin out of Westford. And he was kind enough to write to the board and to the building inspector a formal request to extend the time within which our board should act again on the appeal matter because of this coronavirus doing a number on the scheduled timetable of other boards' meetings. So they haven't been to planning board yet. And Janet, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they formally requested that we reconvene their meeting for September now.
Yes, that's correct.
And so we as a board need to vote the approval of that request to a time and place certain. And I believe the letter, I didn't pull that for this meeting. Do you have it, the date and time? It would be our September 3rd Thursday meeting.
Which is the 17th. And we can say 7:15.
Okay, so I'm going to look for a motion, and I need an alternate to vote it. John, you're in the top row, so I'm going to let you be the alternate to vote it. I need a motion, Rod, to continue the application for an appeal of Charles Bell to that time and place.
Okay, move we extend the meeting to, what was the date and time? As you said.
September 17th.
Reschedule it, yeah.
17th.
Second to that motion, please. Jeff, will you second it?
I second the motion.
Okay, so now we need to vote on that motion. Rod, yes or no?
Yes,
Repeat your name, please.
Rod Stewart.
And Jeff?
Yes, Jeff Yates.
John Field?
Yes, John Field.
Mark Saucier?
Yes, Mark Saucier.
And yes, Sherry Gould. So that motion carries. Thank you very much. That was a good dry run. Now,
Shelley
yeah.
had raised her hand. Did you have a concern? You're on mute.
I think my question was, the letter granted time till August 31st, so shouldn't the meeting be the August meeting?
I thought he sent another letter extending the time to the September meeting.
Not that I saw.
Janet, are you still there?
The letter
Yes.
that you sent was,
I'm trying to look through the letter.
We'll correct this if you're right, Shelley. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Are you looking for it?
I am looking for it. I'm sorry. Everything's
That's it.
digital, so just taking a little bit longer.
That's right. While you're looking for it, I'm just going to announce the format for the next hearing. The next hearing is going to be Melissa Mann, and the way we're going to conduct this is we're going to all mute ourselves, and Melissa is going to present. And then I will ask for board comments one at a time. And then I'll ask for the zoning enforcement officer's comments. And then we can start deliberations, or then I'll ask for any audience participation and comments, and then we'll start deliberation.
Sherry, the date on the attorney's letter is August 31st.
Thank you, Shelley. Can we revote that, please, Rod, to the August meeting? And that would be the third Thursday in August, which is
August 20th at 7:15.
Okay, move that we move the meeting to August 15th at 7:15.
August 20th.
August 20th, I'm sorry,
at 7:15.
7:15.
I second it.
John Field seconds. Rod,
Yeah, Rod Stewart says yes.
Jeff. You're on mute.
Yes, Jeff Yates.
John Field,
Yes, John Field.
Mark,
Yes, Mark Saucier.
and Sherry Gould, yes. Okay, Cheryl, thank you for joining us. This is going to be tricky.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late.
That's okay. We now have 5 sitting members, and I'm going to call the case the 725 case. Number 942A, the petitioner, Melissa Mann, seeks a variance pursuant to 173-10B2 and 173-53 for a detached garage 8 feet from the property line and greater than 30% of primary dwelling at 13 Winged Cove in Littleton. If I can find my mute.
Yep. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kyle Mann. Thanks again for making this possible during this difficult time. We're asking for a variance for a lot line setback reduction from 10 feet to 8 feet for a detached garage. And for a detached garage, it's greater than 30% of the primary dwelling. And so the reason for the lot line setback request is due to the long, narrow lot at the bottom end of the lot. We have wetlands, and to the bottom right side, other wetlands as well. So this is the best part of the property that's tucked away from the wetlands. You can see from the site plan that the septic system's on the opposite side of the property, and we have a driveway that runs through the middle that comes off the existing street. So it would be tough to shift. So to keep it out of the existing driveway is why we've asked for that variance. And
Kyle, can you open up your plot plan so that the board can see the plan?
yeah, we have it open.
I have it open. Can you not see it?
No,
Okay,
we
let's
can
share it.
see.
All we're seeing is your PDF files, not
Can
the
I
actual
stop?
plan.
Can I stop you for 1 minute, please?
Yep.
John Field, you need to make an announcement about the possibility of a conflict and recuse yourself.
I believe he's already, oh, no, he hasn't. Sorry.
I would like to recuse myself.
Kirby, you want to put John Field in
Yep.
the waiting?
Hang on a second. Everybody's shifting around on me here.
Yeah, it did on me too.
All right, there we go. John Field, put in the waiting room. There you go.
All right. Can you see our PDF now?
Yes, you're vertical instead of a landscape.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it the same way, but I'm not. I'll rotate view up top there.
There we go. All right. So do we have any questions or?
Should I explain?
Cheryl?
I think Sherry needs to call on me.
Oh,
Not
sorry.
you.
I don't really know.
Sorry, I recognize Cheryl.
My objection to this before was I couldn't see any reason why you couldn't move it to be 10 feet away from the property line. It looks like you've moved it to be 8 feet away from the property line. I continue my objection. At the time, you said that you were concerned about the neighbor's view, and by scooching it back a little bit further, the neighbor's view wasn't, you could see over it better, and it wouldn't interfere with their view. Now you're talking about putting a finished space on top of it. So
The space.
my
in that-
concern is, excuse me?
Sorry. Keep going. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead.
So our original plan did have the garage above it. The difference between this plan and the original plan is the original plan was 28 by 30, and this plan's 28 by 35. So the height would remain the same as previous. Before, you guys had actually granted us a lot line setback reduction from 10 feet to 7.5, and I scooted the garage in this drawing more closer to the street and the neighbor's driveway, so it's actually tucked back more. So that's why we changed it from 7.5 to 8, and it'll still be tucked back even more than the previous plan. So,
But you're making it 28 by 35 now, and you're putting finished space upon it. Have you gotten permission from the Board of Health?
so I did have a discussion with Jim Griffey about this. We meet the room requirements and all that. It's just going to be a home office up above there. So I have to provide Jim with the drawing sketch of the rooms in our house, but we have 7 rooms now, and with the 3-bedroom house, you're allowed to have 8. So that would count as the 8th room. So I did have a preliminary discussion, but obviously going through the permit process, we'll discuss that further. So, but yes, the answer to that is yes.
In the past, we have never, ever granted such a variance without Board of Health approval. It sounds like you've had a preliminary conversation, but not gotten Board of Health approval.
Well, the Board of Health approval would be involved in the permitting process, I believe. So I think this is the first step in that direction. So that is to come, yes.
And you still can't make it 10 feet away from the property line?
So it fit best in this way, and that's the reason why I'm requesting that variance.
Our neighbor's house is still in the same spot.
Yeah,
so
our
we
neighbor's
would-
house hasn't moved as well, but yeah, it's the way it fits best for the neighbors and ourselves. So that is the reason why we're requesting that variance.
We don't usually grant variances for convenience sake. I'm
Okay.
done.
Jerry? No.
Sherry, Jeff's trying to get recognized.
Sorry, I guess I muted myself. Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff, you're muted.
I asked Janet to pull the decision, and the decision says 8.5 feet.
Oh, 8.5 feet. Sorry.
And I guess I'd like to remind the petitioner that includes overhangs. So
Of course.
the building itself would need to be, depending on your overhangs, need to be more than 8.5 feet. So, and also the decision also states Cheryl's, that Cheryl didn't support this at the first time around.
Yes. And I'm sorry thanks for the correction there. From what I remembered, it was 7.5, but 8.5 makes sense as well. So, but yeah, I understand the overhangs and everything have to meet that setback requirement.
So your plot plan is 8 feet. Do you mean it to be 8.5?
So the variant, and again, I'm sorry about that miscommunication. I for some reason, I thought that last time we had discussed the 7.5, but that's 8.5 is what it was. So I'm requesting 8. It's meeting somewhere in the middle would be fine. Any little bit would help with the situation. So yeah, 8.5 would be fine. As you can see, when you come in the driveway to kind of turn into the garage with the septic across from there, the more room we can have, the better. And as we discussed, the neighbor being able to see by is important to us and him. And so the further we can set it back, the better. I mean, obviously it's up to discussion, so.
Any other board members have comments, please? I want to just make a couple. There is also a variance request here because of the size of the structure. And I want to read the board, the assistant zoning officer's comments and then address the size of the structure as well. The petitioner was granted a variance in October 2018. The building permit issued October 25th. In February 2020, the owner asked about increasing the size of the garage. No construction had been done under the building permit. My response to the homeowner was, the increase in size of the garage needs to be shown on the plot plan. As we discussed last week, it is my opinion that the variance has lapsed because there was no activity on the building permit and it requires a new ZBA filing. I am copying the building commissioner, Ed Mullen, to weigh in on this, as it also relates to a building permit. The building commissioner response of March 4th, 2020 said, sorry for the delay in responding to Michelle's email on February 26, 2020. A permit issued October 30th, 2018 to construct a 28 by 30 garage at 30 Winged Cove Road after receiving approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals on October 4th of 2018. It would have required action within 180 days per section R105.5 of 780 CMR, the Massachusetts State Building Code. A new application to the ZBA for approval to construct the 28 by 30 garage. If the garage is to be located elsewhere or enlarged on the site, again, ZBA approval is required. If approval is received from the new ZBA, a new building permit may be applied for. Since both the building permit and the variance lapsed, the same two variances are required, and those are 173-53 accessory structures and 173-31 intensity of use. 17353 allows for 919 square feet of accessory structure. The homeowner is now requesting to enlarge the garage to 28 by 35, and by my math, that's 980 square feet. And according to written statement, allocate for 2 home offices. The plans label the space as storage and shows a bathroom. The original building permit was for unheated garage with storage above. The plans and statements are in conflict. Is this storage or finished heated space? Has the applicant verified that the sewage disposal system is large enough for additional finished rooms? Plans should be corrected to reflect what is being proposed. Then an email from Jim Gareffi, the Board of Health agent, dated 4/16/2020 says, Janet, I don't have an issue with this proposed building as long as the space above the garage remains a storage area, Jim. Now, that doesn't mean there hasn't been more conversation and the applicant couldn't ask for a home office, but I think that has to go to the Board of Health for that determination. This board has to deal with, do we have a reason to find that the lot is unique in topography and size, which the board in a 4-to-1 vote did find at the last application. And some of the members, and that's again 4 out of 5, found that the proposed location would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood or substantially derogate the intent and purpose of the bylaw. The 8-foot offset is 2 feet short. As you all know, a detached structure for a garage or a barn only needs to be 10 feet from the lot lines, not 15. So the proposal here is for 8 feet. Those are just comments I want to make. I'm going to ask if there's any other board members with comments, and I want to ask if there's anyone in the room or on the Zoom that want to speak to this application.
I do. Am I?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I remember this hearing, and it's hard to find a reason to not set it back 10 feet from the property line, but we went along with it because there was no neighborhood opposition, which I assume is still the case. I don't want to change the 8.5 feet from what we did before because we had a good faith effort on that. But I have a further question about, didn't we have a case with a garage or a building forward from the house? We had that on Harvard Road. Is there some bylaw that we also have to have a variance from? Shelley, can you help me out on this?
Yes, so if they are going to have their home offices in there, that would be a variance from the home occupation bylaw, because that does not allow for a building used as an office to be forward of the rear line of the house.
Okay.
And yes, 75 Harvard Road was the case you were referring to.
And I have no problem with that. It's just that we should tie up the paperwork if we approve this.
If that's the direction they're going and the board is going, that absolutely needs to be a request to amend this variance petition to include that specific provision. I'm still a little troubled, Melissa and Kyle, about the size increasing as much as it did. This was a hard variance for us to grant in the first instance. And the fact that you didn't build it when it was granted doesn't seem to justify asking for it to be even larger this time around. So what's the necessity of going larger?
So I laid it out and staked it out, tons and tons of times, thought back and forth, drove my truck in and out. So since we're using it for personal use, and I also have a small construction business, so I need to store tools and things like that, I felt that the footprint size for the garage itself was important for, the use of my business and still being able to have room for personal use. The room up above is not so much important to me. It's just the way the garage is going to be built. The roof line would remain the same height with the dormer upstairs. So it's like one of those things. It's the garage space that's most important. So that's why the increase of the footprint. The square footage obviously went up by double because of the upstairs as well. So with that being storage / home office, we'd like to have a bathroom up there. But for us, that space was just because we have a growing family and things like that. So obviously, our house itself isn't that large. So that's what's restricting us for the square footage in the garage. But it's the upstairs room is additional square footage for storage and things like that. But the footprint itself is what's important to me for the garage space, not the upstairs. So that was the reason for the increase, not for additional space upstairs, so we could cut the upstairs room in half or just put a bathroom up there and have the rest be unheated storage. But the footprint itself was for the garage space. That's the reason for the size increase, was not for, office space or an extra room. It was simply for the footprint of the garage itself.
But, Kyle, if you took that 35 down by 2 feet, you'd at least hit the 10-foot offset on the easterly side.
Yeah, so we're only 10 feet from the property line. 8 feet down on that. Can you bring up that again? So it's at a little bit of an angle off the property line. So it's actually just one corner that's 8 feet. It quickly gets away from it, as you can see from the drawing. So it's 8 feet down on that furthest most corner towards the house, but it's at an angle away from the property line. So it's, I'd have to get it out and scale off of it, but the majority of the garage does meet the 10-foot offset. It's just that corner. So just the way the driveway comes in, we wanted to keep it kind of parallel to that and tuck that corner away further for the neighbor to be able to see by from up the hill.
Jeff, I still echo your comments of the 8.5 was hard for us to give in the first place, and
I'm sorry about, if I had remembered that it was 8.5 last time, that number would be changed to an 8.5. I thought that I was increasing the setback from 7.5 to 8, but I clearly should have looked further into the.
And once again, the setback is it's not the foundation line; it would be the overhang line. So the actual. I gotta say, it's just hard to understand why we've had 2 meetings about 2 feet. When you have a really large property, you have several things you could do. You could twist it more slightly. You could move it 2 feet over. I don't want to get into it anymore because we've already had a meeting about this, but I feel very strongly that we need to keep the same thing that we decided before. But just in general, this is a hard variance to justify because there is no reason, there's no limitation other than some interest that's not even on your property to not have it 10 feet.
Okay, I was under the impression that the reason for, meetings and lot line setbacks and things like this was more or less to help appease, if it helps appease the neighbor a little bit, that would be a positive thing. But I understand it, it is for the neighbor and not for, in particular, my property. Okay. So, and I am familiar with the overhangs and the foundations being.
Let me poll the other board members. We've certainly heard from Cheryl and Jeff. Mark Saucier, please.
Yeah. If they had come back with the same plan as last time, then it would pretty much be a slam dunk, as much as there was a lot of discussion, a year or so ago. Obviously, it does sound like, even though it says 8 feet on the drawing, we're actually looking at 8.5 feet. I kind of grudgingly go along with it. Again, if it was identical to last time, I'd say sure. But with the larger footprint, and then that adds in the greater than, what, 30% of the main building. It makes it a little tougher to go along with it.
And Rod?
Yeah, I think I'm coming down to the same side as Jeff. It's bigger, so I think I'd rather see it go 10 feet. And you're only talking 1.5 feet. I can't imagine that that's that big a deal.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Let me poll the board, please, Kyle. Rod, I didn't quite follow your logic. I have two 8-foot lines here. One is on the east side and one is on the south side. And what I got from Jeff was that he's considering allowing it to be 8.5 feet as we voted before, even if the structure's bigger. I guess we have to get to a different vote on the bigger structure. Yes, Jeff?
If it was a 10-foot setback, we wouldn't need a variance. We wouldn't need that particular variance. It would be as of right. We would need a variance for the size of it, which I don't have a problem with. I think on this site, I don't think it's a problem. And we would need a variance for the home occupation forward of the house. I don't have a problem with that. We're talking about 18 inches. That's what we're talking about.
And
Is there really a hardship to justify 18 inches? I'm thinking less that there is.
And then I got Rod, Jeff, Mark. Let me ask the alternates, please. Jillian, and I'll come back to you, Cheryl, after. Jillian. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. I mean, I think everyone's kind of brought up the few points. Is I don't have any issues past the last thing that we've already approved.
So you're at 8.5 feet would be acceptable to you.
Yes.
And who else is here? John.
I personally feel that the building should be rotated and kicked out so that the closest is 10 foot. The overhang is 10 foot. It's just a gravel driveway. You need to move the driveway a little bit. It can't be that big a deal. I mean, you're in there anyway making a mess. That would be my preference, is that you maintain the 10-foot clearance.
Okay, Cheryl.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. You said 2 lot lines that were 8 feet. It's only that corner that's 8 feet, correct? The other lot line is in excess of 10 feet. I know it's forward, and typically would be a problem with it being forward, but this is a private road. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the size. It seems silly that we're here over 80 feet on such a huge spot, that it's 80 feet off, and it seems silly that it seems disrespectful even that he's here over 18 inches. I'm sorry. It's disrespectful to our zoning bylaws and silly.
Let me just clarify. What I'm seeing on a plan is an 8-foot line to the
corner.
easterly, to the corner to the easterly lot line, and an 8-foot line to the southerly lot line. The corner of the building to the southerly lot line.
I don't see that.
No, it was 13 feet.
Unless he changed it based on what was sent out by Janet.
So
It
it's
says
just
13.
that one corner. Okay, thank you for clarifying. And so if you brought that down to 33 feet instead of 35 feet, does that disappear the problem? Kyle?
I'm sorry, what was that, Sherry?
If you made this structure 28 by 33, does that eliminate that 8-foot corner problem?
I'd have to, I'd actually pull out the plan and scale off of it again. I'm not sure. I would keep the size and twist it if it came down to that. Because as I said before, it's the footprint of the actual garage itself that's important to me for work and storage and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, as far as turning into the garage, as far as our neighbor being able to see by, as far as aesthetically, which obviously, you know, we're going to admit that that's important to us. It's important to our neighbors. It's important to, you know, we're in a private little community down here. There's only a couple houses. The only people that are going to see it are us. There has been, none of the neighbors have said, you know, anything otherwise. We've spoken with all of them. I helped my neighbor with a little project the other day. We all stay pretty close. So it's, you know, it's not something that anyone's going to be seeing from a major street. Like I said, we're in our own private little area down here, and there's a lot of trees. And like you said too, there's a lot of space. So this is aesthetically for our neighbors, for us, for, you know, everything. And yeah, I know it's only 18 inches, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but obviously we would have to be here anyways for the size discussion. It's a very expensive project, back to Cheryl's thing. So I've put a lot of thought into it, and I'm going to continue to think about it until it's completed. So that's why I'm back for that.
Okay, so what I heard from the polling is that most of the members, or some of the members, could go along with the 8.5 foot offset that we granted before. Most of the members are okay with the size variance, and I think most of the members said they were okay with the structure forward of the house for home occupation. Do I have that right? And we did find before that the 8.5 foot vote was not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. And I think one of the arguments to support that was the fact that it is a wooded private area. It's not like it's a main street, or it's not like a neighborhood where the houses are all consistently set back from the road or whatever. So I guess if everybody's heard enough, I'll look for a motion to close the hearing.
No.
Sure.
I think that other members suggested he could twist that building. And I can live with the size. I can live with it being forward of the house. I can live with all the other things, but that he can't twist it so that it is within more than 10 feet away from the property line seems ridiculous to me.
So we're in a, like I said before, we're in a very private.
Excuse me, Shelley. I'm calling on Shelley.
I just wanted to clarify something on the size. Somebody had said 980 square feet, and because it's the 2 stories, it would be 1,960
Right.
square. So just for the motion, if you're putting a number in there.
Yeah.
In past, have we included when someone has built an in-law accessory, Shelley, when someone has built an in-law accessory dwelling above a garage, have we included the square footage of the garage?
This is the question. That's not the question.
That's a different calculation for a detached accessory apartment. This is for, this variance is for being in excess of 30% of the square footage of the living space of the house. This is a different section.
But you're saying the garage counts?
The entire garage counts for 173.53. The entire square footage counts into this calculation.
Jillian.
Does twisting the structure affect the neighbor's view of the water?
As I understand it, yes. And it's not just insignificant. It is a big impact. I was down there today, and I had a couple of comments, and that is the neighbors who are there are in older structures that have not been updated. So one concern I had was if and when those structures decide to update, this is going to be a very massive piece of building that's going to limit them on where they'll get their views. But the structures that exist now only have a view if we grant this variance, as I can tell, and that's what the Manns represented at their last hearing. And that's
what I remember. I remember that from that meeting.
Yeah. And I still kind of feel the same way about that 8.5 feet. We pushed them as hard as we could on that 8.5 feet, and they demonstrated that that was about the limit of where the view was not going to be lost to the neighbor.
Correct.
And I think that's why we said, those of us who voted it said, we felt that the proposed location wouldn't be substantially more detrimental and would not derogate from the intent and purpose. All right, let's close the hearing. Mark, go ahead.
Mark's muted.
Yeah, just in talking of the view, if I remember, we're trying to preserve the view looking down the driveway.
For the neighbor.
Right.
Correct.
And we pushed it back to 8.5 feet back when the original footprint was, I think, 30 feet long. If we move it up to 35, doesn't that encroach on the sight line that we were trying to preserve to begin with?
So I actually, yes, it would, but I actually took the whole structure and moved it substantially further up the property, tucked back even more than what it was. So it's actually, I think I shifted it up towards the higher end of the property, 12 feet, still meeting the setback from the front side of the lot and tucking it back more. Even with this additional 5 feet, it still will be tucked back more than the previous plan. And if you look at the previous plot plan to the one we have now, I believe the previous one was 32 feet off the highest side of the property, and this one's 18. So it's, in the way the lot goes up at an angle, it's actually going to tuck the structure itself will be tucked back further than the original proposed plan, even though it is 5 feet larger.
It also, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but when I was there today, it also looked to me like by moving it closer to the lot line and your frontage or your driveway frontage, it looked like the elevation where this thing is going to be set lowered it. So the structure wasn't as high by moving it up further to
Yeah, so the neighbor's driveway actually runs up. The elevation steps up, yeah, like you said, about 4 or 5 feet. So it tucks it over and up into, more into a little gully area than anything else. And the way that it's drawn in this proposed plan compared to the other one, even though it is 5 feet larger, it still tucks the structure back into that upmost corner of the property more than the original proposed plan.
Okay. Ready to close the hearing?
I move to close the hearing.
Jeff Yates to close the hearing, and second? Cheryl seconding? Cheryl
Rod will second.
All those in favor of closing the hearing? Rod Stewart?
Yes.
Name, please.
Rod Stewart. You just called me, so I would have thought that was
I
sufficient.
know, but they said they want it repeated twice. Jeff?
Jeff Yates, yes.
Jillian? I'm sorry, Mark?
Mark Saucier, yes.
Cheryl?
Cheryl Hollinger, yes.
And Sherry Gould, yes. Hearing is closed. Do you want to deliberate further, or do you want to try a motion?
I'm still struggling with the 18 inches. The building is going to be huge. I don't have so much of trouble with a big building because it's down in a very heavily wooded area and down into private area, and people should be able to have home businesses and all of that stuff I can live with. I struggle. I guess I am tempered about the size because I understand part of it's a garage, but it's just huge. It's a huge structure. It's bigger than most houses. And the fact that it's not 10 feet away from the lot line is a problem. And there's even the neighbors that he has now are not going to be the neighbors that are there in 10 years. So that's my input. I'm sticking firm that it shouldn't be, he should be, it's a big enough property. He should be able to, if he can build this big a house, this garage, he should be able to rotate it enough to get it 10 feet away from a property line, and convenience is not an issue on it.
Okay, 8 o'clock, any more deliberation, Mark?
Mark Saucier, no.
Jeff?
No.
And Rod?
Are we voting on the motion?
No, we're just.
To end discussion?
Are we ready for a motion?
Okay, Rod Stewart, yes, to end the discussion.
Okay, Jeff or Mark or Rod, or Cheryl, you want to try a motion?
We have 3 variances before us.
That's correct.
The first variance is for the size of the structure as indicated. It's 28 feet by 35 feet, which exceeds the allowed size under the bylaw. That would be the first variance. And I propose that we grant that variance.
That's a motion to grant. Let's do one at a time. Okay. Motion to grant a variance from 173.53 to allow greater than 30% in a structure that was presented according to the plans as 28 by 35, 2 stories. All those in favor? No, I need a second to that motion.
I'll second that.
Mark was the second. And all those in favor signify by saying yes or no. Rod?
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff?
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark?
Mark Saucier, yes.
Cheryl?
Cheryl Hollinger, yes.
And myself, Sherry Gould, yes. So that's the 17353. Okay, next, you're on a roll, Jeff. Go ahead.
The next variance has to do with a home occupation, a building for a home occupation being built forward of the front of the residence.
Which is 17354.
Okay. And I propose that we grant a variance to allow a home occupation in this structure forward of the residence.
Second to that.
Question, is there a way to make this such that the whole building doesn't become office space? That it remains, I mean, the reason I don't mind the whole size thing is the downstairs is a garage and the upstairs is the office space. If this is to become another whole structure, then it becomes another thing.
Then you can add to the motion.
So I'd like to add to the motion that the home occupation only be allowed in the second floor under the, well, as described in the previous plan of under the eaves of the building. I don't know if that's specific enough. I don't know. I mean, the question is, you know, to some degree, the garage is part of a home occupation also if he's storing his equipment there.
Yeah, and I'm troubled by what if he wants to just stick an 8.5 by 11 office in the corner of the garage because that's easier to do paperwork downstairs than up. I'm not that concerned about that. Cheryl, the home occupation has to be limited to the home occupation laws that no more than one employee.
We've given other people an awful hard time about getting this big. Certainly over on Barron Way, when they had a home occupation, we kept them to the size. And this is a huge building. This is bigger than many houses. So, I mean, I'm okay with it if it's garage, and people should have a garage. And I understand he's in the construction, and I don't want to be unreasonable. I'm okay with a garage and a home office above it, but to have a business, he's going to move someday. He's going to leave this building behind, and to have a huge structure like that try to become I'm troubled by
Barron Way is not consistent. Barron Way was a studio that had independent contractors coming multiple times a day.
It wasn't the use that we questioned there. It was the size. And
no, it wasn't. It was the traffic. It was the use on Barron Way because they advertised.
Not when they built it. That was when it was appealed. When they built it, we were worried about the size. And when they move, they're going to leave behind this big structure. And if the whole thing becomes a home residence, gosh, that's an awful big home residence in a very residential neighborhood, very quiet private street, narrow private street.
Okay, your point is made, Shelley.
You could probably condition it that if the use changes from home occupation to be living space, they have to come back to you and amend it or refile for a change of use.
I was under the impression that you would have to do that anyway.
Yeah,
it really is going to be a garage downstairs because that's what he needs.
Yeah, whatever agreement you want to make as far as the garage space goes is, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's.
All right,
that's
Melissa and Kyle, we're deliberating and voting. You can't speak anymore.
Oops, sorry.
Unless we ask questions.
Okay, Rod Stewart seconds Jeff's motion.
Okay, thank you, Rod. All those in favor of Jeff's motion that is not conditioned, it is that this home occupation can be forward of, this is a variance from 17354, that the home occupation can be forward of the residence. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Rod?
Can we hear,
Rod Stewart,
Rod,
yes.
can we hear Jeff's motion first again, please? I'm
Yeah.
confused.
They were speaking of the first motion, which did not, that just spoke of the home occupation, but did not speak of limiting the occupation to a part of the building. And the more I think of that, I think that's the way to go. I mean, we have home occupation laws. I mean, if there is something going on there, the same thing would happen as happened in Barron Way. And you're right to think about that, because that was where it was a private drive and they had a home occupation that brought up to 40 cars a night down that drive. And that's what brought them to, you know, to the board in the final thing. So I just sort of think that anyone buying the property subsequently is going to want a garage.
So repeat
They'd
your
have to
motion.
go through the building permit thing to convert it to, I mean, they'd still be subject to whatever bylaws we have for all of the uses that we have in our bylaws.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. what you're
And
saying.
Jeff's motion was to restrict the home occupation on the second floor, and that's the motion I seconded.
Well, we could do that with that condition.
No. Your first
No.
motion was not to restrict it, and I would prefer to try it without the restriction.
I agree with you. I think that it's,
Okay. We'll let it stand.
So wait, let me understand what Jeff's saying. Jeff is saying that right now the downstairs would be unfinished space and the Board of Health is only going to recognize one room and it's got to be a certain.
No, what they want to do is to, under the roof, which will have a dormer, they want to build a home office.
Right.
And which presumably would be part of their business, their home-based business. And the problem I have with conditioning it is that, does that mean that they can't use the garage for their home office? Or does that, I think it's unnecessarily restrictive. The building's going to be there. Your concern is that the business gets too large that would disrupt the neighborhood. And there are other remedies for that. That's basically neighbors calling the building inspector and investigating that, which is what happened at Barron Way, many years ago.
So right now what they're applying for is an unfinished garage space below and
Yes.
a finished space above. If
Yes.
they change that and they go to finished space below, then they have to come back to us?
No, because they can have a 28 by 35 finished office space, provided there is no more than one employee on the premise. And in fact, a contractor's home occupation includes the unfinished area where they store their equipment. So I don't want you to make a motion that says the home occupation is restricted to the second floor. It's ambiguous to what this applicant is trying to do. They're trying to have their home occupation in a garage area that they would like to be 28 by 35. And they've presented that they hope to have a finished office room in it, but it's a home occupation. It's not a structure to house somebody sleeping there. That's what they're presenting.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying if we restrict it, we may restrict their ability to use the downstairs for storage of the garage space.
The home occupation equipment.
Of the home occupation. Okay.
And so I don't think it needs a
So
restriction.
I'll withdraw my request to
Okay.
amend the variance on that.
Will you move it again, Jeff, please?
I move we grant a variance under, you can fill in the
17354.
to allow a home occupation in a building built forward of the residence.
The words are placed forward of the rear line of the residence.
Yes.
Okay. Rod, do you want to second that one?
Yeah, Rod Stewart will second it.
Okay. All those in favor? Rod?
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff?
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark?
Mark Saucier, yes.
Cheryl.
Cheryl Hollinger, yes.
And Sherry Gould, yes. Okay, now we're down to the third one.
So finally, we have a variance. I move that we grant a variance for the structure as described in the 28 by 35 structure, as described generally on the site plan provided, with a setback of 8.5 feet at its closest. We could just say 8.5 feet and allow an 8.5 foot setback for this structure. And I do realize that it's only in a small portion of the building that's 8.5 feet, but.
Do you want to put that right in the decision? That the 8.5
feet?
Yeah, that the 8.5 foot relates to the corner as shown.
Well, I guess yes, because I think we need to refer to the. I'm sorry, my dog's barking. I think we need to refer to the diagram that he submitted. It's not a certified plot plan, but
The diagram he submitted says 8 feet.
well,
Jeff is amending
we're
that.
saying it's 8.5 feet, but it shows it that it's twisted so that it's not parallel with the lot line. It's actually.
So we're going to say no closer than 8.5 feet at the
Right.
rear corner, substantially as shown
Yes.
on the diagram.
Yeah.
And second on that?
I was going to let somebody else second because I would reluctantly vote for it.
I'll second that. Mark Saucier.
Thank you. And then voting members, Rod,
Stewart, yes, reluctantly, because I would prefer 10, but I'll go with 8.5.
Jeff,
I'll go with 8.5 because we granted that before.
Mark,
Mark Saucier, yes.
and Cheryl.
Cheryl Hollinger, nay.
You need to say no, sorry.
No.
You don't pick up yay and nay. And Sherry Gould, I'll go with yes. So that pretty much reinstates the variance you had before. You have to wait for the decision to be filed, and then there's a 21-day appeal period. Okay?
Thank you very
Melissa
much.
And Carl, and you need
Thank you for
to
your
work
time.
it out with the Board of Health, okay?
All right, we will. Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time.
Yeah, okay. All right, we're a little behind schedule here, and I apologize to whomever else is in the room.
Cheryl, would you like me to readmit Mr. Field?
Would like Mr. Field to come back, yes. And I
Cheryl?
see our next,
Sherry, if we just remind people that they have access to raise their hand down on the bottom. They put the cursor at the bottom of their screen. I believe it's on the left side. There's a place, and I'll be able to see that easier than I can see them raising their physical hand on the screen, just because we have so many participants.
okay, did they all hear that? Did everyone hear that?
Janet, I don't see it.
Kirby, can you help me out? I think it's to the right of the start video sign on your left, on the left bottom of your bar.
I believe if you click on participants, you'll then get a list of everybody there. And that will give you the upper raise or lower hand.
Yeah, it's in the lower right corner of that list, yeah.
Mine's under more.
Oh, I see. Raise hand. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call the next hearing. The time is 8:15, and I'm calling case number 943A. The petitioner, Douglas DeShane, seeks a variance pursuant to section 17335 for signs at 119 Russell Street for Workers' Credit Union. Mr. DeShane, I'm going to ask you to present first. Board members, mute yourselves until he's done, and then we'll call on board members for comments. Then we'll call on the zoning enforcement officer, the assistant zoning enforcement officer's comments, and then anyone else who's appearing on this petition. Can I just ask, Mr. Austin, I see you joined. Are you on this petition? Are you a neighbor and a butter to this?
I'm not.
And are you speaking to this petition?
I'm not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trying to get a handle on who's here. Okay, Mr. Duchesne, recognize you.
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, and members of the board, good evening. Douglas Duchesne, representing Workers Credit Union. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, and now I'm going to try and share my plans. All right. Well, good evening. As you may know, Workers Credit Union had chosen a couple of years ago to relocate its company headquarters to Littleton. In doing so, they purchased the empty office building located at 119 Russell Street. What attracted Workers Credit Union to that building was not only its size, but certainly its location. Being located along 495 and Route 119 gave it significant sight lines to those major roadways, along with its frontage along Russell Street. In fact, as part of the permitting process for the redevelopment of the building, the Conservation Commission granted us permission to clear some of the trees and foliage between the building and Route 495, even though it was located within buffer zones, in order to allow sight lines from 495. Workers Credit Union bought the project, and as some of you may know, has invested tens of millions of dollars in redeveloping the building to create a headquarters that it can be proud of. After receiving all necessary permits from the Planning Board and the Board of Health, construction began, and it is close to completion. Now that the building is nearly complete, my client sought permits for the signs for the building, which had been shown on all of our plans and presentation materials to the Planning Board. However, we found out that in fact the signs were not consistent with your sign bylaw, and therefore Workers Credit Union is seeking variances for 3 of the 4 signs proposed for the building. What I'd like to do is just go over the specifics of the signs themselves, and then I'd like to present our basis for the variance request. This plan, and I apologize that it doesn't look quite professional, but what I did is I mocked them up with some street names and things so that it would be easier for me to explain, not being there in person. So here's the building here, the main headquarters building. As you can see, it faces Route 495 here on the bottom of the plan. To the right, it faces Route 119, which would be in this area. And then this is the frontage along Russell Street here. We are proposing 4 signs, and again, 3 of which are required a variance to conform. Sign 1, as I'm referring to it, is here, and that is the sign that faces Route 495. Sign 2, which is shown on this picture, faces Russell Street. Sign 3 is really just the numbers 119, and that does conform. And then the 4th sign, which does also require variance, is here, and that is facing Route 119. Down here on the bottom, this is a depiction of what that sign that faces 495 is. That sign is proposed at 207.5 square feet. And I think I can go here and I can give you a blow up of what that sign looks like. And you can see it here up on the facade facing 495. Now your bylaw requires that signs can be no larger than 15% of the wall on which they sit. And they cannot be larger than 50 square feet. Now in our case, in this sign in particular, the sign being 207.5 square feet, the front wall that it sits on is in excess of 7,800 square feet. So this sign represents less than 3%, and actually only 2.6% of that front wall. And again, the bylaw limits you to 15%. So we are well below that. However, we do exceed the 50 square feet at 207.5. Sign 2 is the sign facing on Russell Street, and that's shown here on this upper drawing. And then here's a detail of that sign. You can see it here along the front of the building facing Russell Street, and this is a blow-up of the sign itself. This sign is proposed at 81.6 square feet, and given the size of the building, face of the building on which it sits, this one represents just over 1% of the building facade. But again, it is over 50 square feet. The third sign for which we are requesting a variance is sign number 4. This is a sign on the end of the building that faces Route 119. And again, here is the sign on the building itself. Here is a close-up of the sign. And this sign is proposed at 90.7 square feet on a wall that is 3,200 square feet in size. So this sign actually represents the biggest percentage of the wall it sits on at 2.6%. Again, well below the 15% that is allowed. Given the size of the walls on which these signs are placed, and I hope the plans are reflective of this, you can see that the signs by no means are large and are overwhelming in any respect. In fact, quite frankly, if these signs were much smaller, and certainly if they were under 50 square feet in size, I think you would have difficulty seeing them from the fronting streets. I believe Russell Street is well over 100 feet away. I'm only guessing, but I guess 495 is probably 200 to 300 feet away, and 119 is even in excess of that. So we're quite a ways set back from the streets, and if we were to put signs that were 50 square feet, quite frankly, they would, I question whether they would be seen very well at all. And yet, the fact that this building fronts on those roads was the very reason it was attractive to the Workers' Credit Union, because they assumed they would be able to get some sight lines from those surrounding streets, especially given that it is their headquarters. With respect to the standards for considering the granting of a variance, as you know, one of the first things we talk about is whether a literal enforcement would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. Quite frankly, as discussed above or discussed earlier, this location is the headquarters for Workers' Credit Union. They've chosen Littleton as their new home, and it is imperative to the success of the company that its headquarters is visible from the surrounding roads, and that not only is the building visible, but that it is recognized as the Workers' Credit Union headquarters. So if these signs are not allowed, I do believe it would be a substantial hardship to workers and their efforts to be successful in its new location. There is a non-financial hardship owing to circumstances relating to the soil, shape, and topography of the site and the structure itself, which certainly especially affects this site and the building, but is not something I think that the surrounding area addresses in general. That is that we do have significant hydric soils on the site. The vast majority of the property along the Route 495 corridor is hydric, and there are wetlands and buffer zones. That is what dictates the distance that Workers was allowed to build from 495 in adding on to the building. So they couldn't push the building up closer to the highway so that it could be seen because of those soils. Also, the shape and the topography of the lot certainly plays a role in these signs. As some of you may know, this is a long rectangular lot, and the building was actually designed to be long and rectangular as well to sit on the lot correctly and meet the setbacks. So given the size of the building, as I said earlier, signs meeting the bylaw of 50 square feet would be dwarfed by the building, and so not as visible as needed to be effective, especially from 495 and Route 119. I do believe that the desired relief could be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent of the bylaw. The intended purpose of the bylaw, as I understand it, is to protect the public from overly large, intrusive signs and adversely affect their view sheds. I think the pictures speak for themselves that these signs are in no way overbearing or intrusively large. I think they fit quite well with the building, and I think the architects have done a great job in making sure that it would be an attractive building for the public and the neighbors in general. Given the size of the building and the setback from those roads, I do believe that the proposed signs are in keeping with the intention of not being overly large or intrusive. Moreover, the signs, I think, have been designed to be aesthetically pleasing. I think the architects have done a great job at melding them into the architecture so that they fit in and that they are substantially consistent with the overall size of the building. So we do not believe this would be substantially detrimental to the public good. And quite frankly, I think the Workers' Credit Union coming here, making Littleton its headquarters, improving this site and this building as it's done, I would hope that it's going to be successful for them, and in doing so will be successful for the community at large. They are a great neighbor and a tremendous benefit to the town, and so I hope we can do what we can to support their efforts here. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide you any additional information you might need, but I would ask you to consider granting this variance so that they can finish this building and move in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Sherry, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm going to again call on board members first and poll the board, but I just want to ask if there's anyone who's joined the meeting that wants to speak to this petition, just so I can keep track. I have one phone number down in the corner I don't recognize.
Sherry, that might be Mr. Robert Lockett. He's a senior vice president with Workers' Credit Union.
Okay.
And he's tied in by phone, and he's also has a second phone connected to me. So if we need to ask him any questions, I can speak with him.
Thank you very much. Okay. Cheryl, I think your hand was up first.
Doug and whoever the senior vice president is listening, welcome to Littleton. It's nice to have you join us. The building's very aesthetically pleasing. I have no problem with the sign facing 495 and no problem with the sign facing 119. And your managers have already joined Rotary and already being good neighbors. I am concerned about the size of the sign that is facing a very residential area and would ask that you consider diminishing that sign to be within the bylaws or closer to the bylaws because of the residential neighborhood they were facing. They indeed bought houses that bordered commercial industrial property, but nonetheless didn't realize that they were going to be quite so close to it with the point, and now you're building. So that would be my concern. Can you reduce the sign that faces the very residential area?
Before responding one-on-one to that, let's hear from the whole board as to their comments, and then you can address them all at once, please, Doug, okay?
Yes.
Rod, Did anyone else raise their hand? Rod, want to go
Yeah.
next?
Well, I don't have any issue because they're all proportional. I mean, they're small with respect to the building. The biggest one faces 495. And I think the one facing Russell Street, if you get right down to it, the size of the building is much more overwhelming than the sign would be. And the sign is pretty good scale to the building. Nothing like that one we did on 2A down the way where I think it's way too big for the front of the building.
Jeff?
First of all, the presentation is excellent. You know, we don't often get a good presentation. I think it demonstrates that the signs are in proportion to the building. My only question would be, they are non-illuminated. Does that refer to interior illumination? Will there be exterior illumination?
Hang on to the answers, okay, Doug?
Yep.
Jillian?
It looks like the side of the front of the building on Russell Street looks more like a cutout. Is that correct?
Yes.
That helps.
Yes, it's not. Oh,
More Jillian, or can I go to Mark?
We can go to Mark.
Mark Saucy.
Yeah, as Cheryl said, welcome to Littleton. Fine addition to the community. I don't have a problem with the sizes of the signs based on the size of the building. The only question I have is the one that Jeff started talking about, is the illumination, especially the one facing Russell Street and houses across the street. So as long as there's no issues with those being over illuminated or whatever, the rest of the project looks pretty good.
Doug, you want to speak to that now then?
He's muted.
there we go. Yes, I just spoke with Mr. Lockett. It is correct. There's no internal lighting. There is exterior lighting that lights downward. The lights aren't from below or under shining up. They're above shining down. So the light will be directed down on the sign and won't be directed out at all.
Can you elaborate more on the Russell Street side? I think that's more of a concern to us. I mean, if they're cut out and they're not illuminated, so to speak, brightly or much at all, then I can live with them on the residential side much easier.
Lighting on the front any different? Let me check with Mr. Lockett.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. My client is indicating that yes, the sign on the front facing Russell Street does have the downward illumination, although it is less illuminated, and that they've already met with the neighbors next door and agreed that the lighting on Russell Street would be set to timers, so that it would be, it would be shut off. At once business hours are over, or it will be shut down after business hours. So
Our bylaws actually have a structure for that. That lighting for signs has to be off at a certain hour.
yes, and I do recall when we were with the planning board, that was discussed.
11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And applicant has indicated that they've offered more to the neighbors than 11 p.m. He said after close. Let me go on to the polling of the board, please. John Sewell.
He's muted.
I know, I hate to find my mouse. I have no problem with the signs. I think it's a very large building and the signs are set back on the building. I mean, you could have stuck the sign right on the side of the street and that would have been very ugly. And as long as at least the sign on Russell Street is turned off at night, I don't have much care whether we light a sign onto the Highway 495. But yeah, I think if the street goes dark at night on Russell Street, then that will probably appease everybody and make them less obtrusive.
I should say too that in meeting with the neighbors, we have agreed to plant some additional trees actually on the neighborhood side of Russell Street for the home that's directly across from the sign. So we've been working with that neighbor since the planning board process. And we've already committed to that neighbor that those signs the lighting would be reduced earlier in the evening than 11 o'clock.
Okay. John
If I
Field.
could, Madam Chair, just to address the question of whether, we could reduce the sign on Russell Street. Well, obviously, if we're not granted the permits, we would have to do so. But that sign is a cut lettered sign. So in measuring the sign, though, what you do is you measure the rectangular area taken by the letters. You don't just measure the surface of the letters. So unlike the other signs, which are actually sort of mounted signs, these are cut letters. So I guess if we took the time to measure the actual letters themselves, we're probably under 50 feet. That sign's only 80.6 square feet, and that's drawing the rectangular box around the letters.
You do have to draw the rectangular box via the bylaw.
Yeah,
We
I
understand
understand that, but I'm just saying from a physical perspective,
it does make it less offensive that it is cut out, though, I gotta admit.
Thank you.
Doug, I'd like to hear from John Field next, please.
No, I have no issues. The lighting was an issue, but it seems like it's addressed.
Okay. I drove around the building several times and have a couple of comments. I have absolutely, I'm very impressed that your sign company took our bylaw and the size of that building and presented something that was as close as in keeping with the bylaw and still recognizing the size of the building. So like you said, Rod, it's not overpowering like the one on 2A. It is proportionate to the size of each facade. I understand the one facing the highway. I think it's absolutely essential, and I actually got on the highway and went both directions to visualize what that would look like for the benefit of workers, for the traveling people, automobiles passing that highway. But I do not understand the need for the excessive size sign, believe it or not, facing 119. That size is not going to be any more visible than a 50 square foot size from 119. It's way too far away and it's way too distant. It would seem to me that the whole need for that sign is so that employees and others parking in that left-hand lot can find the entry door. It's not going to do anything to the traffic on 119. And if anything, I didn't understand why your sign people wouldn't have proposed a nice granite monument sign on the corner of your lot at 119, which is allowed by the bylaw, because if you want to route traffic in from the point or from 119, that to me would be a far more effective sign for people coming off the highway looking for you, especially businesses and commercial people. So can you just speak to that? Why is that?
I couldn't agree more. And we did look at the possibility of putting a freestanding pylon sign down on the corner of 119. Unfortunately, all that we have down there along that frontage is a steep embankment, which I believe is part of the highway layout, and you hit right down into the wetlands. So there is no dry upland area to place a sign along 119, which is, I assume, why they at least made an effort to provide some signage facing 119, and our only option was to put it on the building. I do know we looked very hard at how we could we would literally have to get a permit to alter wetlands to put a sign out on 119.
Even just a pad for concrete? I mean, a beautiful concrete monument sign would be gorgeous on that corner.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, but we would literally be talking filling wetlands.
So I still maintain my position that 80 square feet or 50 square feet facing 119 is not going to make a darn bit of difference. I sat there at the light watching. I came out of the point to look. I went down the on-ramp of the highway. You lose visibility there. That sign is only visible from your parking lot on that side. Everything else I have no problem with.
What?
I think we should move on. I think the rest of us are okay with that. We understand that people in the parking lot, whatever.
Mr. Deschaines' client is speaking to him.
Bob, what did you say? I'm going to relay it to the board. Yeah. So Mr. Lockett's indicating that, in fact, you know, the Conservation Commission told us that they would not allow us to alter wetlands for a sign. And so they felt their only way to put signage facing 119, although you may be right, Madam Chair, that it may not be as effective as we hope, but it's our only opportunity. They did not want to propose anything larger than that, because at that point, I think it's 90 square feet. I think they would have, it would have been pushing the envelope, but, the architects and my client just felt that that was their only opportunity for signage to face 119.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to this petition? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I so move.
And second?
Rod Stewart, seconds.
Okay, I think we can probably go right to a vote unless anybody has deliberation comments. Anyone want to make a
Do you
motion?
want to take a roll call to close the?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff,
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark,
Mark Saucier, yes.
and Cheryl,
Carol Hollinger, yes.
and Sherry Gould, yes. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion.
I move. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Oh, Jeff, go ahead. You're better at it than I am.
Okay. I move we grant a variance for signage on the Workers Credit Union building as proposed in the drawings submitted to the board. These signs are located, there are 3 signs that are subject to variance. One is located on the 495 side of the building, one is located on the 119 side of the building, and one is located on the Russell Street side of the building. Based on their presentation, I propose we grant the variance as requested.
I just
Jeff,
need to,
is there a way to tie in the negotiation they did with the neighbors?
Well, I think we can do that, and whoever writes the decision in the findings that.
I also need you to clarify that we're moving more than one variance. So the location 1 wall sign requires a variance to the size because it has a public entrance and orientation to a street.
No, that's the location.
I'm sorry, that requires a variance to there being no
Right.
Orientation to a street.
Okay.
So that, no public entrance. So that one needs 2 variances.
Yeah, variance 1 is for the sign on 495 is for size only. Variance 2 for the sign on 119 is for size only. Variance 3 on the Russell Street side is for size only, and what else? You just described it.
No,
It's for size and.
I don't think you have it right. Location 1, which is facing Route 495, needs size and no public entrance.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yes.
And then location 2, north elevation facing Russell Street, needs a size variance, and that one's going to be conditioned on the hours of illumination being reduced out of respect to the residential neighborhood.
That's location 3.
This says on the north elevation facing Russell Street,
Right.
location 2. Location
Oh,
3
I'm
is the
sorry.
one that doesn't need a variance. Location 3 doesn't need a variance, that's just numbers. And then location 4 is the
4
one
is the
facing
119.
119.
Yep.
And that one is just
Side.
side. Okay?
Okay. Does everyone understand that?
As long as you write it up.
Okay.
You want to second it?
Rod Stewart will second.
Okay, all those in favor, let's poll. Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff,
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark,
Mark Saucier, yes.
Cheryl,
Cheryl Hollinger, yes.
and Sherry Gould, yes. Okay. I think that's it, Doug.
Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you very much. And thank you for your efforts in doing these remote meetings. I personally don't find them very easy because of my technical issues, but I do appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for a good presentation.
Thanks.
And pass our welcome on to your client, please.
Oh, he's heard you. Yeah, thank you.
Tell him he needs to come to the Rotary meeting with his managers.
Will do.
All right.
Okay, the
Thank you
time
very
is
much.
you're welcome. Time is 8:45. Apologies to you, Mr. McNaught. This is a little more challenging than I expected. Case number 941A, the petitioner Andrew McNaught seeks a variance pursuant to section 173(1), intensity of use to construct an addition onto the easterly side of an existing structure at 5 Long Lake Road. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both also to all the members of the board for doing this remotely to help keep things moving along for us. It's been a challenging time, and I do appreciate that. If you see my wife or my children run around, please don't hold it against me. Or if I have difficulty with some of the screen sharing features, please don't hold that against me either. I'm going to do my best to be as brief as possible here, out of respect for everybody's time. What this is, as Madam Chairwoman Gold mentioned, is an addition to our existing house at 5 Long Lake Road. There's been a lot of thought that's gone into this and the best way to do this. I was hoping to do it in a way, and we were hoping to do this in a way that would not need us to request a variance, but unfortunately, because of the size of our lot, the size of our home, and the layout of our lot, there was really no other way to do this. I consulted with all my neighbors. All of them are on board with this addition, and I'll share with you the plans in a moment and the photos and the layout. No opposition. Everybody thought it was well thought out and is being done really the best way possible. I'm going to try to share my screen right now so you can see what we're dealing with here. I'll try to blow this up. Does everybody see a PDF I just opened?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what the proposed front of my house will look like after the addition. It is going to increase the house size from 1272 square feet to 1954 square feet. So first and foremost, this is not going to be a large structure either way. This is just reflecting the fact that we're a growing family and a young family, and we need some space here. We wanted to potentially go to other portions of the lot, other sides of the lot. Unfortunately, going south, which is towards the street, Long Lake Road, is not an option. We would run into frontage issues against the street. We would run into issues with our septic system. Going north, which is into our backyard, isn't feasible either because of the layout of the house. We have a walk-in basement. There would really be no way, given the current layout of the house, for us to add. One of the things we want is a second bathroom, for instance. This is a 1-bathroom house right now. A modern kitchen. There really wouldn't be a way to do that. Even if we did, we would lose pretty much our entire backyard, which both me and our neighbors and multiple engineers I spoke to said that would be more detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. The west-facing side of the lot is not an option either. We're already non-conforming on that side, less than 10 feet to our neighbor on that side, I believe, or we're less than 15 feet either way, I know that. So there's simply no room. A lot of precedent in this neighborhood for these very issues, as I'm sure the board knows. I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up, though. We're looking to keep our existing roof line. This is going to be in character with the rest of the neighborhood. Like I said, all of my neighbors think this is a really well thought out plan, and they're on board with it, particularly the easterly neighbors who I'm abutting. The last name is Tabor, James and Annalise. They actually loved it. They're very much in support of it. If you look at the pictures that I submitted to the board, this is sort of the section of the lot that makes the most sense. Not only is our only option from an engineering and architectural perspective, from an aesthetic perspective as well. It's sort of the back part of the driveway that right now isn't it wouldn't obstruct any views, and it isn't being used for anything right now. So this would be a way to take a home that isn't necessarily practical for a family of 4 and to make it practical for a family of 4, and therein lies our hardship. And, you know, the reason why I didn't come to this board until I consulted with multiple professionals is I wanted to make sure that we're talking about something that makes sense, you know, from a character, aesthetic perspective as well, and is the best way for us to handle this. So, and one other point I do want to make before I turn it over to the board members and answer any other questions. Let me see if I can change my screen here and show you a photo of the property. This is kind of an old photo from Google Maps, but you can see the easterly side of my property right here, and then the westerly side of the Tabor's property, the yellow property here. They said they have no issue anyways, and they like it. But one of the reasons we don't have to worry about abutting, you know, in case they ever wanted to go in this direction, the resident explained to me they can't build to the west because that's where their septic is. So they're set back a significant amount anyways. As you can see, it's a lot for the Long Lake neighborhood. I believe it's about 40 feet or so. And they said that wouldn't be the direction they could build in anyways because they would run into their septic. So, you know, I hope this shows we put a lot of thought into this to make this as practical as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions, pull up other plans if you guys need to as well. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Do you have a picture of the existing house? I'm sorry, Sherry.
Go ahead.
Do you have a picture of the existing
I
house?
do. Just give me one moment to make sure.
I think I by the wrong house.
It's the back of the existing house. This is the easterly side, the direction I would want to build in, and this is the front view of the house. So if you see where I'm going over my cursor, that's a mudroom. That would be demoed as part of the new addition, and we'd just be going off in that direction to the east.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I've got a question. Do you have a plot plan or a plan view? And what would be the setback you're looking for from the side? I believe that's where you're going to be encroaching. There we go.
Exactly, yeah. So here's the plot plan. I apologize if you guys didn't get these in advance. My engineer was supposed to send them your way. So you can see we're the closest we would get would be 6.9 feet here. And that's that number right there, 7.3 feet towards the back end of the proposed addition.
These are tight lots down there.
Yeah. And we found that out the hard way. We were hoping with the survey we would come in, you know, within the setback requirements, but it's as you said, it's tight lots, and we're doing our best under the circumstances.
Well, our big concern about these adding additions on these tight lots is making sure people have enough room to mow around their property, maintain their property, put a ladder up to the roof of their property and stay on their property. And 6.9, that's basically almost 7 feet. That seems like you have it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sherry, Jeff has his hand up.
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, I want to call on you. I just can't see all the rest of the members. Can I take the plans down now and see the membership so I can call on people?
Yes, I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Jeff, go.
Well, my comment was a couple things. Number one, you have almost 10 feet on the left-hand side. One of our other concerns is that there be enough room for equipment to get to your backyard if you so need, and that probably is enough. Otherwise, I would say that's, I'd have a hard time supporting it. Secondly, in terms of granting a variance, we also have to look at the front setback, which is non-conforming. And just so you know, the steps are considered structure. So your site plan now shows it to the landing, and it should show the steps. And I'm not here to say that we wouldn't grant you the variance, but when it's written, it needs to allow for that, or otherwise you would have trouble.
No steps.
Well, the steps should, whatever setback we decide on should include the room for the steps.
Jeff, the assistant zoning enforcement officer called that out in her comments, but also the zoning bylaw has an exception for the average of the abutting properties.
Okay.
And these houses on this particular street were all built with approximately the same setback, which is short of 30, but they're all about setback the same, aren't they, Andrew?
So are you, I just want to make sure I understand Mr. Yates's question. You're saying on the proposed addition that call for a 27.9 foot for the front steps, that would be non-compliant with the current setback requirements of 30 feet?
Your site plan showed the dimension to the landing, not to the foot of the steps. The steps.
Oh, I see. I see.
And the other thing is your existing front steps project out, and I don't think that your new steps are projecting out further than the existing ones.
I don't believe they are either.
They're set back a couple feet from, the landing and steps are a couple feet back.
Can I ask you, do you know off the top of your head what the number is that those need to be without a...
The required setback in the zoning bylaw is 30. Your existing shown on the plan is 30.4, and your proposed to the landing is 27.9, according to the assistant zoning enforcement officer's comments. And she comments that the plot plan shows the proposed front setback of 27.9, but this doesn't include the stairs. Offsets have to include the stairs. So to Jeff's comment, if we vote this variance on these plans, we ought to give you a front setback variance as well.
We're not saying that there's an issue with it, because your neighbors are exactly the same, and there's an automatic sort of grant for houses being in line.
I certainly would have no objection to being granted a setback in the variance, and then obviously if I need to use it, we'll use it reasonably. So I appreciate the board flagging that for me, so thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to this? Anybody want to move to close the hearing?
I'll move to close the hearing.
Second on that, please.
I'll second that, to close the meeting.
Mark seconded. Call the board. Rod, to close the hearing.
I'm sorry, I was trying to get the space bar is supposed to mute and it didn't work. Rod Stewart, yes.
Yeah.
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark?
Mark Saucier, yes.
Cheryl?
Cheryl Hollinger, yes.
Sherry Gould, yes. Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
Someone else, please.
I make a motion that we grant, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, that we grant the variance as shown. And someone has to fill in the map, the plot plan number.
1 second. From a variance from a section 173.31 intensity of use.
From 173.31 intensity of use.
And 173.10B non-conforming uses.
And 173.10 being non-conformity uses. I feel like I'm in school.
I know. I'm reading Shelley's, so I feel like I've been schooled. For a proposed addition to the pre-existing non-conforming structure.
For proposed addition to the pre-existing non-conforming structure, and then I need to say why.
Wait. Refer to the certified plot plan prepared by David E. Ross Associates. dated
Fine.
10/20/20.
Referring to the certified plot plan prepared by David E. Ross Associates,
Dated 2/10/2020.
dated 2/10/2020,
And I would just add to allow the sideline, a variance to the sideline and a variance to the front steps, as
to
shown.
allow a variance to the sideline not to be greater or lesser than, he says 6.9 is close.
6.9.
So should I say 6.5 feet? You see, wiggle an inch or two, not to be greater than 6.5 feet. And the variance to the front with the steps, what are we looking at?
Probably 24. Would that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, we have 27.9 and there's quite a few steps. I would say 20.
Me too. Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah.
Not to be greater than 20 feet to the front.
Less than.
Less than 20 feet to the front. Sir, we're not trying to give you extra room. We're just trying to make sure that you don't have to come back before us because your stairs don't work.
I very much appreciate that, and thank you for your professionalism in flagging that for us. That's above and beyond, and we appreciate it.
We've already put the motion out there, but I forgot to ask if there's anyone in the room, Brad, Chase, who want to speak to this?
No, thank you.
Chase, you still with us? Okay.
Oh, nothing to say, Sherry. Thank you.
Okay. Then I'll take a second to that motion, please.
I second.
Jeff, second. And let's vote it. Rod?
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff?
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark?
Mark Saucier, yes.
Daryl?
Sarah Hollinger, yes.
And Sherry Gould, yes. Congratulations, you have it, and you can, you have 20-day appeal period from the date that we file the decision, which should be soon.
Great. Madam Chairwoman and the rest of the board, thank you guys very much for your professionalism and your great work. I appreciate it.
Thank you for a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the board members, the alternates, and anyone who joined us tonight for doing this and being professional and making it happen. Janet, Kirby, and Judy, huge kudos to you for setting this up so well and so professionally. Makes our jobs easier. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
worked well.
Terry, it's like you've been running these for years.
And Shelley, I don't think I called your name out. You too, Shelley. Just being present in your comments. Everything has just made it easy for us. Thank you. Janet schooled me this morning. I had about a 2-hour session with Janet. All
Good
right.
job, Janet.
Move to close to,
You have to make a motion.
want to move to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I second.
All those in favor, Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
Jeff,
Jeff Yates, yes.
Mark,
Mark Saucier, yes.
Daryl.
Cheryl Hollinger, I want to say no, but yes. Just for the heck of it, you know, just to be
There you
different.
go, yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey,
Good night.
Thank you, Janet.
takeout window for bourbon.